The auctioneer's hammer fell with a crack that echoed through the dusty barn. Sold to the little girl in the back. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd as Emma Thompson pushed her way forward, clutching a coffee tin filled with crumpled bills and coins or life savings. At just 10 years old, she stood before the auction pen, her chin held high despite the disapproving glances from adults towering over her. The German Shepherd cowered in the corner of the pen, ribs protruding like the bars of a cage, eyes clouded with defeat. Where others saw a worthless animal destined for euthanasia, Emma saw something different, a spark buried beneath layers of neglect and fear. "I'll take him now, please," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Girl, that dog ain't worth the trouble," the auctioneer warned, counting her hard-earned dollars. "He's been returned twice. Failed service dog program. Probably sick, definitely untrainable." Emma's fingers reached through the wire fence toward the trembling animal. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a silent promise. Neither she nor the shepherd knew it then, but this moment would not only save them both, but would eventually shake their entire community to its core. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Emma Thompson had always been different from other children in Oak Ridge County. While her classmates spent their allowances on candy and toys, Emma saved every penny in an old coffee tin that once belonged to her father. Robert Thompson had been a respected dog trainer in their small rural community until his unexpected passing just 14 months ago. The heart attack had left Emma and her mother Sarah with only memories, mounting bills, and Robert's unfinished training manual filled with handwritten notes about canine psychology and behavior. "You've got your daddy's way with animals," Sarah would say, watching Emma coax the neighbor's aggressive cat into purring or calm a panicked bird that had flown through an open window. This gift wasn't just a talent, it was Emma's connection to her father, a way to keep him close when the grief threatened to overwhelm her quiet, determined spirit. Life in Oak Ridge wasn't easy these days. The shuttering of the local mill had left many families struggling, and Sarah Thompson worked double shifts at the diner to keep a roof over their heads. Their modest farmhouse sat on 2 acres at the edge of town with a weathered barn that Robert had converted into a training space before his death. Now it stood mostly empty, a monument to interrupted dreams. The community had its share of challenges beyond economic hardship. Resources for families with special needs were scarce, forcing many to travel hours to the city for basic services. Emma had witnessed this struggle firsthand through her friendship with Lily Wilson, whose younger brother had autism and would have benefited tremendously from a properly trained service animal if only such assistance had been accessible or affordable to ordinary families in Oak Ridge. The German Shepherd that caught Emma's attention at the county auction was a sorry sight indeed. His once lustrous coat hung in dull patches, revealing skin irritations beneath. One ear stood at attention while the other flopped forward, giving him a perpetually confused expression. But it was the dog's eyes that captivated Emma. Amber-colored and intelligent, they held a sadness that seemed to reach beyond animal suffering into something almost human. There was history in those eyes, a story waiting to be uncovered. Emma had first heard about the county auction from Mrs. Wilson, who mentioned it during one of her visits to drop off homemade apple pie for Emma and her mother. "They're auctioning off animals from that service dog training facility that went bankrupt, Mrs. Wilson had said, her voice carrying the weight of community gossip. "Such a shame. I heard some of those dogs were almost fully trained before the money ran out." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, thinking about those dogs. What would happen to them? Where would they go? By morning, she had made up her mind. She would attend the auction just to see. The coffee tin beneath her bed contained exactly $237.42 money saved from birthdays, Christmas gifts, and odd jobs like walking Mrs. Peterson's poodle and helping Mr. Jenkins organize his garage. "Mom, can I go to the county auction on Saturday?" Emma asked over breakfast, trying to sound casual as she pushed her cereal around the bowl. Sarah Thompson looked up from her nursing textbook with tired eyes. She had been taking night classes, trying to build a better future for them both. "The auction? "What for, honey?" "I just want to look," Emma said, not quite meeting her mother's gaze. "Mrs. Wilson said they have dogs from that training place that closed down." Sarah sighed, recognizing the determined set of her daughter's jaw so like Robert's. "We can't afford a dog right now, Emma. The vet bills alone." "I know," Emma said quickly. "I just want to see them. Maybe I could help somehow." After much negotiation, Sarah agreed to drop Emma off at the auction on her way to work, but with strict instructions to stay with Mrs. Wilson's nephew who worked the concession stand. "Just looking," Sarah reminded her, "and I'll pick you up at noon." Saturday arrived with a sky full of threatening clouds. The county fairgrounds buzzed with activity as trucks and trailers delivered goods for the auction. Emma clutched her coffee tin inside her backpack, heart pounding as she surveyed the animal pens at the far end of the grounds. The dogs were kept in temporary enclosures, most of them alert and responsive to the crowd gathering around them. German Shepherds, Labrador Retrievers, Golden Retrievers, all breeds commonly trained as service animals. Volunteers walked them periodically, and most appeared well cared for despite the facility's financial troubles. All except one. In the farthest pen, separated from the others, lay a German Shepherd so still that Emma initially thought he might be dead. His ribs protruded sharply beneath his dull coat, and flies buzzed around his ears without provoking even a twitch of annoyance. "What's wrong with that one?" Emma asked a volunteer who was filling water bowls. The young woman glanced over and frowned. "That's Thunder. He was returned twice by families who adopted him. Started having seizures during his service training. Medical costs were too high for the facility to justify, especially with their financial problems. He's on the auction list, but—" She didn't finish the sentence, but Emma understood the implication. Emma approached the pen slowly. "Hi, Thunder," she whispered. The dog's ear twitched, and one amber eye opened to regard her warily. As the auction began, Emma found herself moving closer to the front of the crowd, her hand gripping the coffee tin inside her backpack. The auctioneer, Mr. Anderson, moved quickly through the items and animals. The trained dogs went for prices that made Emma's heart sink. $1,500, $2,000, some even higher. Then came Thunder's turn. 2 handlers entered his pen to bring him forward, but the dog could barely walk. They half carried him to the auction block. Next up, lot number 47, male German Shepherd, approximately 3 years old. Some health issues, started service training but did not complete the program. We'll start the bidding at $100. The crowd was silent. Mr. Anderson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Do I hear $75? Anyone? These animals need homes, folks." Emma's hand shot up before she could second-guess herself. $50, she called out, her voice cracking slightly. Mr. Anderson squinted into the crowd. "Do I see who made that bid?" Emma stepped forward, feeling the weight of every adult gaze. "I bid $50, she repeated, louder this time. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Mr. Anderson looked uncomfortable. "Little girl, this isn't a pet auction. This dog has health problems. He needs medical attention and special care." "I have $237.42, Emma stated firmly, pulling out her coffee tin. "And I know about dogs. My dad was Robert Thompson." Recognition flickered across the auctioneer's face. Robert Thompson's reputation as a dog trainer still resonated in the community. "But even so, young lady, your parents would need to." "My mom dropped me off," Emma interrupted, a half-truth at best. "She knows I'm here." Mr. Anderson looked around, hoping perhaps that someone else would bid and resolve his dilemma. When no one did, he sighed. Going once at $50, going twice, sold to the young lady in the front. The next hour passed in a blur as Emma completed paperwork with the help of Mrs. Wilson's nephew, who had noticed the commotion and come to investigate. He called Sarah at work, which resulted in a tense conversation that Emma could hear even without the phone being on speaker. By the time Sarah arrived at the fairgrounds, red-faced and flustered, the transaction was complete. Thunder had been officially transferred to Emma's ownership, along with a folder containing his medical records and training history. "Emma Rose Thompson," Sarah began as she marched toward her daughter, but her angry words died on her lips when she saw the condition of the animal lying weakly on the ground beside Emma. The girl was gently stroking his head, whispering words only the dog could hear. "He was going to be put down, Mom," Emma said quietly, not looking up. "Nobody wanted him." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, wrestling with frustration, practical concerns, and the unmistakable echo of her late husband in their daughter's compassion. "We can't afford the vet bills, Emma. This dog looks seriously ill." "Dad's emergency fund," Emma suggested. "He would have wanted us to use it for this." The emergency fund, a small insurance policy Robert had maintained, was meant for their future security. But looking at the determination in her daughter's eyes, Sarah recognized a healing she hadn't been able to provide despite her best efforts. The drive home was quiet, with Thunder lying across the back seat, his head resting on Emma's lap. The dog was too weak to sit up, but his eyes remained fixed on the girl who had saved him, as if trying to understand why she had chosen him when everyone else had turned away. By the time they reached their farmhouse, news of Emma's auction purchase had spread through Oak Ridge's efficient gossip network. Mrs. Wilson was already waiting on their porch with a dog bed and supplies. Mr. Jenkins pulled up shortly after with his son, a veterinary student home for the weekend, offering to examine Thunder at no charge. As Thunder was carried into the house, past the dusty training equipment in the barn that had stood unused since Robert's death, something shifted in the atmosphere of the Thompson home. There was purpose again, and despite the challenging road ahead, both Sarah and Emma felt a sense of rightness that had been missing for 14 long months. The first week with Thunder tested Emma's resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. Despite her determination and the knowledge gleaned from her father's training notebooks, she found herself overwhelmed by the German Shepherd's dire condition. Thunder refused to eat, responding to offered food with vacant stares or weak turns of his head. He seemed to have given up, his body merely going through the motions of survival without any will behind it. Each morning before school, Emma would sit beside Thunder's bed in the corner of the kitchen, offering small pieces of boiled chicken or scrambled eggs that her mother had prepared. "Please eat, Thunder," she would whisper, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. "Just a little bit." But the dog remained unresponsive, his amber eyes dull and unfocused. At night, Emma would read aloud from her father's notebooks, hoping that the sound of her voice might provide comfort. Sarah often found her daughter asleep beside Thunder's bed, one hand resting protectively on his bony shoulder. Though concerned about Emma's emotional investment in what increasingly looked like a losing battle, Sarah couldn't bring herself to extinguish the spark of purpose that had returned to her daughter's eyes. By the fourth day, Thunder had lost even more weight, and Emma returned from school to find her mother on the phone with the veterinarian discussing humane options. Overhearing the conversation, Emma fled to the barn, seeking solace among her father's abandoned training equipment. There, surrounded by the faint scent of leather and sawdust that still reminded her of Robert, she allowed herself to cry for the first time since bringing Thunder home. "I don't know what to do, Dad," she sobbed into the empty space. "I thought I could save him like you would have. I thought I was special with animals like you always said." A gentle hand on her shoulder startled her. It was Mrs. Wilson, who had come by with more supplies and a casserole for dinner. The elderly woman sat beside Emma on the weathered bench where Robert used to prepare his training sessions. "Your father wasn't always successful right away, you know," Mrs. Wilson said, her weathered hands folding neatly in her lap. "The first dog he ever tried to rehabilitate was a lot like your Thunder." Wouldn't eat, wouldn't respond. Robert was about ready to give up. Emma looked up, tears streaking her cheeks. "What happened?" He discovered that the dog had been trained to eat only on command, a specific command from his previous owner. Once Robert figured that out, everything changed. Mrs. Wilson patted Emma's hand. "Sometimes, dear, it's not about pushing harder. It's about understanding what's already there." Mrs. Wilson, as it turned out, had more to offer than just neighborly support. Before retirement, she had worked as a veterinary technician specializing in rehabilitation for service and working dogs. Her experience, coupled with her genuine affection for Emma, made her an unexpected ally in the fight for Thunder's recovery. That evening, after Mrs. Wilson had gone home, Emma pulled out all of Thunder's paperwork from the facility. She spread the documents across the kitchen table, scrutinizing every detail about his training history. Sarah joined her, using her nursing knowledge to interpret the medical terminology in Thunder's health records. "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to a notation in the margin of one document. "It says response to original handler commands only requires retraining for transition. I wonder if that means..." Emma was already flipping through her father's notebooks, searching for information about service dog training protocols. "But Dad wrote something about this," she murmured. "About dogs who get so bonded to their first trainer that they don't respond to anyone else." Together, mother and daughter compiled a list of standard service dog commands. The next morning, instead of offering Thunder food directly, Emma placed the bowl near him and clearly stated, "Thunder, take food." Nothing happened. She tried again with different phrasing. "Thunder, mealtime." Still nothing. After cycling through several more common commands without success, Emma remembered something else from her father's notes. Sometimes handlers used unique commands to ensure their dogs wouldn't respond to strangers. "Thunder," she said firmly, making eye contact with the weakened animal. "Thunder, nourish." The German Shepherd's ear twitched. Emma held her breath. "Thunder, nourish," she repeated. Slowly, painfully, Thunder raised his head and turned toward the food bowl. With tremendous effort, he dragged himself closer and took a small piece of chicken into his mouth. Sarah, who had been watching from the doorway, pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob of relief. Emma remained perfectly still, afraid any sudden movement might break the spell. Thunder ate 3 small pieces of chicken before exhaustion overtook him, but it was enough a breakthrough that kindled hope where there had been only resignation. The discovery of Thunder's command responsiveness marked a turning point in his recovery. Emma created a systematic approach to reintroducing commands, documenting which ones Thunder recognized and which needed to be retaught. Mrs. Wilson visited daily, bringing not only her expertise but also specialized supplements to support Thunder's nutrition and recovery. "The seizures mentioned in his records concern me," Mrs. Wilson admitted after watching Thunder carefully for several days. "They could be from malnutrition, but they could also be neurological. We should be prepared." Sure enough, on the 6th day, Emma witnessed her first of Thunder's seizures. It happened during their morning routine. One moment Thunder was responding to commands, and the next he collapsed, his body rigid and trembling. Emma remembered her father's instructions about canine seizures and remained calm, speaking soothingly to Thunder while timing the episode with her Mickey Mouse watch. 3 minutes and 22 seconds later, Thunder relaxed, exhausted but conscious. "You're okay," Emma whispered, gently stroking his side as he recovered. "I've got you, Thunder." Sarah, who had been frozen in the doorway watching the seizure, was amazed by her daughter's composure. When Thunder had fully recovered and fallen asleep, she sat beside Emma on the kitchen floor. "Your father would be so proud of you," she said softly. "Not just for helping Thunder, but for being so brave." Emma leaned against her mother, suddenly exhausted. "Mrs. Wilson thinks the seizures might get better with proper nutrition and medication. And even if they don't go away completely, we can learn to manage them." Sarah nodded, her practical nursing mind already calculating costs and care requirements. But seeing the bond forming between her daughter and the damaged animal, witnessing how Emma's grief over Robert seemed to be channeling into something productive and healing, made the challenges ahead seem surmountable. As the first month with Thunder progressed, small victories accumulated. The German Shepherd began to respond to Emma with increasing awareness, his eyes tracking her movements around the room. By week 3, he could stand on his own for short periods, and by week 4, he managed his first tentative walk around the kitchen. Each achievement was celebrated and documented in Emma's notebook, which she had titled Thunder's Comeback. The physical transformation was remarkable. Thunder's coat began to regain its luster, and while his ribs were still visible, they no longer threatened to pierce through his skin. His eyes, once dull with defeat, now held a spark of intelligence and interest. When Emma returned from school, Thunder would lift his head in acknowledgement, sometimes even attempting to rise and greet her. What amazed the small circle of supporters most, however, was the transformation in Emma herself. The quiet, grief-stricken child who had withdrawn from friends and activities after her father's death was emerging from her shell. Thunder's needs had given her purpose, and his response to her care had restored her confidence. The journey ahead remained uncertain, with Thunder's health still fragile and his training needs substantial. But the turning point had been reached. Both dog and girl had found in each other a reason to persevere. As spring blossomed across Oak Ridge County, so too did Thunder's transformation. The once skeletal German Shepherd now moved with increasing confidence around the Thompson property. His coat had regained much of its former luster, rich black and tan gleaming in the morning sunlight as Emma led him on progressively longer walks. Though still thin, his muscles were rebuilding, definition returning to his shoulders and haunches through carefully planned exercise routines Emma had adapted from her father's notes. Sarah Thompson, watching her daughter and the dog from the kitchen window as she prepared for her nursing shift, marveled at the change in them both. Emma's face, previously frozen in a mask of quiet grief, now animated with purpose as she worked with Thunder. The girl's nightmares, which had plagued her since Robert's death, had diminished significantly since Thunder began sleeping at the foot of her bed, his presence seemingly warding off the worst of her subconscious fears. "They're healing each other," Mrs. Wilson observed during one of her regular visits to check on Thunder's progress. "Your Robert always said that sometimes the most broken animals make the most dedicated companions once they learn to trust again." The seizures remained a challenge, though their frequency had decreased with proper nutrition and the medication regimen Mrs. Wilson had helped establish. Emma had become expert at recognizing the subtle warning signs, the slight disorientation, the distant look in Thunder's eyes that preceded an episode. She kept meticulous records of each occurrence, timing, duration, and potential triggers, and creating a document that impressed even the county veterinarian during Thunder's follow-up appointment. "You've got a future in veterinary medicine," young lady Dr. Harrison commented, reviewing Emma's notes. "This is more detailed than most of the case files I receive from my technicians." Emma's approach to Thunder's rehabilitation went beyond physical care. Drawing from her father's training philosophy that mental stimulation was as important as physical exercise for working dogs, and she incorporated simple tasks and commands into their daily routine. The breakthrough came when she discovered that Thunder responded instantaneously to hand signals paired with verbal commands, a hallmark of professional service dog training. "Look, Mom," Emma demonstrated one evening, holding her palm flat toward Thunder while saying, "Thunder, settle." The German Shepherd immediately lowered himself to the ground, eyes alert but body completely still. "And watch this." She made a different gesture, and Thunder rose, moving to position himself precisely at her left side. "He knows advanced commands. He must have completed more training than they thought before the program shut down." Curious about the extent of Thunder's training, Emma began testing various service dog commands she found in her father's books and online resources. To her amazement, Thunder demonstrated knowledge of over 30 specialized commands, including retrieving specific objects, opening doors by pulling attached ropes, and even bracing to provide stability, though his strength was not yet fully recovered for this more physically demanding task. One rainy Saturday afternoon, while organizing her father's desk in the corner of the living room, something she'd avoided doing since his death, Emma discovered a locked drawer. The small key, which she found taped beneath the desk blotter, revealed a folder containing correspondence with various service dog organizations. Among the letters was a name she recognized from Thunder's paperwork, Northeast Service Canines. "Mom," Emma called out, spreading the papers across the kitchen table. Dad was consulting for the same organization that trained Thunder. "Look at these letters." They were asking his advice about their training protocols. Sarah examined the documents, recognition dawning on her face. "Your father mentioned this project. He was helping them revise their training methodology for seizure alert dogs. It was his last consulting job before." The connection struck them both simultaneously. Thunder had been part of a specialized training program that Robert Thompson had helped develop. The coincidence seemed almost too perfect, as if Robert had somehow guided Emma to this particular dog who shared a connection to him. Further investigation of Thunder's medical records revealed another crucial piece of information that had been overlooked in their initial review. Thunder hadn't developed seizures during training. He had been specifically selected for the seizure response program because of his unusual sensitivity to pre-seizure indicators in humans. His own seizures had begun only after the facility's financial troubles led to cuts in veterinary care and nutrition quality. He wasn't failing as a service dog, Emma realized, reading the notes with newfound understanding. He was being trained as a seizure alert dog, but when he started having his own seizures, they couldn't justify continuing his training. It wasn't that he couldn't do the job, he just got sick before he could finish the program. This revelation transformed Emma's approach to Thunder's training. With Mrs. Wilson's guidance and her father's notes, she began to see Thunder not as a rescue project, but as a professional in interrupted training. His responsiveness to commands wasn't just good behavior, it was evidence of extensive professional preparation. If he was that far along in his training, Emma reasoned, then maybe we could finish what they started. The idea took root and blossomed rapidly. Emma immersed herself in research about service dog training, particularly for seizure alert dogs. She contacted several organizations, presenting herself as a handler working with a partially trained service animal. Most dismissed her because of her age, but one retired trainer, impressed by her detailed questions and obvious knowledge, agreed to provide guidance through email and weekly phone calls. As summer arrived, bringing with it long days perfect for extended training sessions, Emma and Thunder established a rigorous routine. Mornings began with physical conditioning walks that gradually increased to light jogs around the property perimeter. Midday sessions focused on command reinforcement and response time. Afternoons were dedicated to specialized skills, retrieving specific items, navigating around obstacles, and practicing alert behaviors. Sarah, initially concerned about her daughter's intense focus on Thunder's training, came to recognize the therapeutic value it held for Emma. The training sessions gave structure to days that had previously been empty of purpose. The small achievements provided concrete evidence of progress where before there had been only the static grief of loss. While other children spent their summer vacation at pools and parks, Emma worked with Thunder with a dedication that belied her 10 years. The community's initial skepticism about Emma's capacity to rehabilitate Thunder gradually shifted to curiosity and then to genuine interest. The neighbors who had once whispered about that poor Thompson girl and her doomed rescue project now stopped by to witness Thunder's progress. Mr. Jenkins built a set of training obstacles in his workshop, installing them in the Thompsons' barn as a surprise for Emma's 11th birthday in July. Even Emma's teacher, M.S. Parker, visited regularly, bringing books on animal behavior and training from her brother, who worked at a zoo in another state. The turning point in public perception came during Oak Ridge's annual 4th of July picnic in the town square. Sarah had initially hesitated to bring Thunder to such a crowded event, concerned about overstimulation triggering a seizure. But Emma's confidence in Thunder's progress won out, and they decided to attend for a short period, ready to leave if Thunder showed any signs of distress. Thunder, wearing a simple training vest that Mrs. Wilson had sewn, navigated the crowded park with remarkable composure. He maintained perfect heel position beside Emma, undistracted by children running with sparklers or the tantalizing smells from the barbecue grills. When the high school band began playing unexpectedly, causing several pet dogs to bark and lunge at their leashes, Thunder remained steady, his attention focused entirely on Emma. The most revealing moment came when little Timmy Wilson, who had been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder the previous year, experienced what his mother recognized as the beginning of a sensory overload episode. As the child began rocking and covering his ears, Thunder alerted, his posture changing subtly. Without command, he positioned himself between Timmy and the crowd, creating a buffer that reduced the child's stimulation. The effect was immediate. Timmy's distress visibly decreased as he focused on the calm animal now standing protectively nearby. Mrs. Wilson, fighting tears, approached Sarah and Emma after Thunder's intervention with her grandson. "That's not just good training," she said quietly. "That's something special, something innate." Word of Thunder's behavior at the picnic spread through Oak Ridge like wildfire. Emma found herself fielding questions about service dogs and their capabilities, explaining patiently to adults many times her age how animals could be trained to assist with various disabilities. Thunder's documented seizures, rather than being viewed as a liability, became part of a larger narrative about resilience and purpose, the dog who overcame his own health challenges to help others. As summer progressed, Emma made a significant decision about Thunder's training. Rather than focusing exclusively on seizure alert work as originally intended by the breeding program, she would adapt his training to address multiple support needs based on what she observed in their community. Oak Ridge had no service dogs of any kind. The nearest organization that provided them was 3 hours away and had a waiting list stretching years. "Dad always said a good trainer listens to what the dog is telling them," Emma explained to her mother. "Thunder is showing aptitude for different kinds of support work. I think we should follow his lead." Sarah, who had witnessed Thunder's intuitive response to Timmy Wilson, couldn't argue with her daughter's assessment. "Your father would agree with you," she said, touching Emma's hair gently. "He always believed in working with a dog's natural instincts rather than against him." Through careful observation and documented training sessions, Emma identified Thunder's particular strengths. He had exceptional focus in chaotic environments that demonstrated natural protective positioning around vulnerable individuals, and showed remarkable discrimination in item retrieval based on scent. These abilities, combined with his established command response, made him potentially valuable for multiple support roles. One sweltering August afternoon, as Emma and Thunder were training in the relative coolness of the barn, an unexpected visitor arrived. Carol Jenkins, the mother of Emma's classmate Zach, pulled into the driveway in her minivan. Sarah met her at the door, surprised by the unannounced visit from a woman she knew only casually from school functions. "I'm sorry to intrude," Carol began, twisting her hands nervously. "But I've been hearing about what Emma's doing with that German Shepherd, and She paused, blinking rapidly. "Zach's been diagnosed with epilepsy. The doctors think that's why he's been having those dizzy spells at school. We're trying medication, but it's not fully controlled yet, and he's terrified of having a seizure in public." Sarah called Emma from the barn, and Carol hesitantly explained her situation to them both. "I know this is an unusual request," she finished, "but I wondered if you might talk to Zach about how you handle Thunder's seizures. He won't talk to the counselor at the hospital, but he's always loved dogs, and when he heard about a dog that has seizures too." What began as a conversation about coping strategies evolved into something more significant. As Emma demonstrated Thunder's training, the German Shepherd displayed an unexpected behavior. He became intensely focused on Zach and maintaining physical contact and exhibiting the same alert posture he had shown with Timmy Wilson at the picnic. Halfway through their conversation, Thunder positioned himself against Zach's leg and looked up at Emma with what her father's notes described as the alert gaze. 3 minutes later, Zach experienced a small seizure, one that his mother might not have recognized immediately without Thunder's warning. The episode was brief, but it confirmed something important. Thunder's original training as a seizure alert dog remained intact, and his own condition hadn't diminished his ability to sense oncoming seizures in humans. "This changes everything," Emma whispered to her mother that evening after the Jenkins had left with plans to return. "Thunder isn't just a project anymore. He could actually help people help kids like Zach." The realization brought both opportunity and complication. Thunder's potential as a working service dog had implications beyond their home. If he could provide valuable seizure alerts for someone like Zach, did Emma have the right to keep him primarily as a companion? The question touched on ethical considerations beyond her years, yet she approached it with characteristic thoughtfulness. Dad would say that service dogs choose their people as much as people choose them. She mused aloud, sitting cross-legged on the porch with Thunder's head resting in her lap. But how do we know who Thunder is supposed to choose? Sarah, watching her daughter wrestle with these complex questions, recognized a maturity emerging that both impressed and saddened her. Emma was being forced to consider selflessness in terms most children never encountered. The decision crystallized after a conversation with Dr. Harrison during Thunder's monthly checkup. The veterinarian reviewing Thunder's latest test results delivered a mixed assessment. His overall health has improved remarkably. He told them, but these neurological episodes aren't temporary. They're likely to continue throughout his life, though we can manage them with medication. On the drive home, Emma was uncharacteristically quiet. When they pulled into their driveway, she finally spoke. "I know what we need to do with Thunder," she said firmly. "He can't be a full-time service dog for someone else because he needs his own care. But he can still help people just differently than most service dogs." Her proposal was innovative. Thunder would become a community resource, working primarily with children who had seizure disorders, sensory processing issues, or anxiety. Rather than being placed with a single individual, he would remain with Emma as his primary handler, but would be available for scheduled support sessions and educational demonstrations. His own seizures, rather than disqualifying him from service work, it would become part of his educational value, showing children that differences and challenges didn't diminish one's ability to contribute meaningfully. The plan required adaptation of traditional service dog protocols, but Emma found surprising support from unexpected quarters. Ms. Parker helped her develop a presentation for the school board about Thunder's potential role in supporting students with special needs. Dr. Harrison offered to monitor Thunder's health and adjust his care plan to accommodate his working schedule. Even the local library expressed interest in hosting regular sessions where children could practice reading aloud to Thunder in a judgment-free environment. As summer faded into fall and Emma returned to school, Thunder's schedule began to fill with purposeful engagements. Tuesday afternoons found him at the library, lying patiently while hesitant readers gained confidence in his undemanding presence. Thursday mornings, before Emma's school day began, Zach Jenkins visited for what his mother called seizure buddies, time sessions that combined practical seizure management strategies with the comfort of Thunder's alerting abilities. Weekends often included community education events where Emma demonstrated Thunder skills and spoke about service animal awareness. "You've created something remarkable here," Mrs. Wilson told Emma as they watched Thunder working gently with her grandson Timmy during a scheduled session. "Not just rehabilitating a dog, but reimagining what service can look like for both animals and people with special needs." Emma, watching Thunder guide Timmy through a simple retrieval exercise designed to improve the boy's focus and sequencing abilities, felt a certainty that had been absent since her father's death. "Dad used to say that sometimes our greatest challenges reveal our true purpose," she replied. "I think Thunder's seizures didn't disqualify him from being a service dog. They just qualified him for a different kind of service." The journey that had begun with a desperate bid at a county auction had evolved into something neither Emma nor Sarah could have imagined. Thunder, once dismissed as damaged and untrainable, had become not only a beloved companion but a pioneer in a new model of community support. And Emma, the grieving child seeking connection through an abandoned animal, it had found not just comfort but carrying forward her father's legacy in ways that honored both his professional expertise and his compassionate spirit. Word of Thunder's unique role in Oak Ridge spread beyond the county lines as autumn painted the surrounding hills with brilliant oranges and fiery reds. Local newspapers ran features about the innovative community service dog program, and several regional organizations reached out to Emma and Sarah about replicating their model in other rural areas lacking traditional service animal resources. The small operation that had begun as one girl's rescue mission had evolved into something with potential far-reaching impact. On a crisp October morning, as Emma completed Thunder's morning exercise routine in the rejuvenated barn that now served as their training center, Sarah appeared at the door with an unexpected announcement. "There's someone here to see you and Thunder," she said, her expression carefully neutral. "A Dr. James Reynolds from the National Service Animal Foundation. He says he's been following Thunder's story." Emma brushed hay from her jeans and straightened her ponytail, curious but cautious. The Thompson property had received visitors before, mostly local officials, educators, or families interested in Thunder's services, but none had arrived with such impressive credentials. Dr. Reynolds stood by Sarah's car, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and an expensive wool coat that seemed out of place in rural Oak Ridge. His polished appearance contrasted sharply with the working farm surroundings, but his smile appeared genuine as Emma approached with Thunder at her side. "You must be Emma Thompson," he said, extending his hand. "And this remarkable animal must be Thunder. I've heard extraordinary things about your work together." Thunder remained perfectly positioned at Emma's left side, his training evident in his calm, alert posture. The dog's transformation from the skeletal, defeated animal at the auction to this confident, powerful German shepherd was nothing short of remarkable. "Thank you," Emma replied, shaking the man's hand with the composure that had become her trademark in professional interactions. "What brings you to Oak Ridge, Dr. Reynolds? Perhaps we could discuss this inside," he suggested, glancing at the brightening sky. "I have a proposal that might interest you and your mother." At the kitchen table, over coffee for the adults and hot chocolate for Emma, Dr. Reynolds outlined his purpose. The National Service Animal Foundation operated elite training facilities across the country, providing highly specialized service animals to clients with specific needs, all fully funded through corporate sponsorships and private donations. "We've been following Thunder's progress through the articles and that lovely feature on the regional news," Dr. Reynolds explained, his voice carrying the polished cadence of someone accustomed to speaking publicly. "What you've accomplished with him is exactly the kind of innovative approach our foundation aims to support." He placed a glossy brochure on the table, displaying images of immaculate training facilities, professional handlers working with various breeds, and beaming recipients meeting their service animals. "We're launching a new regional center 3 hours from here, focusing specifically on multi-purpose service animals for children with complex needs. The model you've pioneered with Thunder, working with multiple children rather than placement with a single client, aligns perfectly with our community support initiative." Emma listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "That sounds like important work," she said carefully. "It is indeed," Dr. Reynolds agreed. "And we'd like Thunder to be part of it. Our foundation would like to acquire him for our premier program, with full recognition of your groundbreaking work, of course. He would become our ambassador animal, representing the potential of dogs that might otherwise be overlooked." Sarah's coffee cup paused midway to her lips. "Acquire," she repeated. Dr. Reynolds nodded smoothly. "We're prepared to offer substantial compensation naturally. Thunder's value as a training model and public relations asset is considerable." He mentioned a figure that made Sarah's eyes widen. "Additionally, we would provide lifetime care, the finest veterinary services for his seizure condition, and professional handling to maximize his potential." Emma's hand moved instinctively to Thunder's head. The German shepherd, sensing her subtle tension, pressed closer to her side. "You want to take Thunder away from Oak Ridge? Away from the children he's working with now?" "I understand your concern," Dr. Reynolds replied with practiced empathy. "But consider the greater impact. At our facility, Thunder could help develop protocols that would benefit hundreds, perhaps thousands of children nationwide. His story could inspire donations that would fund training for dozens more service animals." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Sometimes we have to think beyond the immediate community to create lasting change." The kitchen fell silent as the implications settled over them. The financial offer alone would resolve many of the Thompsons' ongoing struggles: medical bills from Robert's final illness, the mortgage they had been fighting to maintain, even college funds for Emma's future. For Sarah, working double shifts while attending nursing classes, such security must have seemed almost miraculous. "We appreciate your interest," Sarah finally said, her voice measured. "But this isn't a decision we can make immediately. Thunder isn't just a project or property. He's become part of our family and an important resource for several children in our community." Dr. Reynolds nodded understandingly. "Of course, these decisions require careful consideration. Why don't I leave my information and you can contact me when you've had time to discuss?" He produced a business card embossed with gold lettering. "I'll be in the area for the next week touring potential locations for our regional facility. Perhaps I could return in a few days?" After Dr. Reynolds departed, Emma released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Thunder, sensing her distress, placed his chin on her knee in a comforting gesture they had never formally trained. "Mom," Emma began, her voice uncharacteristically small. "We can't. We don't have to decide anything right now," Sarah interrupted gently. "There's a lot to consider for all of us." The following days brought intense discussions within the Thompson household. Sarah, ever practical, acknowledged the life-changing potential of Dr. Reynolds' offer. "This kind of financial security doesn't come along often," she pointed out. "It could mean so much for your future, Emma." Emma understood the reality of their situation better than most children her age. She had overheard late-night phone calls about payment extensions, had noticed how the pantry sometimes grew sparse before payday, had seen the fatigue lining her mother's face after consecutive shifts. Yet something about Dr. Reynolds' proposal troubled her in ways she struggled to articulate. "It just doesn't feel right," she confided to Mrs. Wilson during one of the older woman's regular visits. "Thunder isn't just doing a job here. He knows these kids. He has relationships with them. And Dr. Reynolds talks about him like he's a prototype or something." Mrs. Wilson, whose grandson Timmy had made remarkable progress through his sessions with Thunder, regarded Emma thoughtfully. "Your father used to say that good trainers listen to their instincts as carefully as they listen to their animals. What are your instincts telling you, Emma?" Before Emma could formulate a response, Thunder's head lifted sharply, his attention fixed on the driveway. Moments later, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the house. Dr. Reynolds emerged, along with two colleagues he introduced as behavioral specialists from the foundation. "I hope you don't mind the unannounced visit," he said smoothly as Sarah invited them in. "We were conducting site evaluations nearby and thought we might observe Thunder in action, if that's possible." As it happened, Zach Jenkins was scheduled for his regular Thursday session with Thunder that afternoon. With Carol Jenkins' permission, Dr. Reynolds and his colleagues observed the interaction from a respectful distance. They watched as Thunder alerted to a small absence seizure before Zach himself was aware of it, providing comfort during the brief episode and helping the boy recover his equilibrium afterward. Dr. Reynolds' interest sharpened visibly. During a moment when Emma was helping Zach with his journal entry about the session, a therapeutic practice they had developed together, the doctor approached Thunder directly, running professional hands over the dog's structure and examining him with clinical assessment. "A remarkable specimen," he commented to his colleagues. "Despite the health issues, his working ability is extraordinary. Imagine what could be accomplished with our resources and protocols." From across the room, "Mawasi should deswasi from a how." Emma noticed Thunder's subtle discomfort with the examination, a tension in his shoulders that most would miss, but that she had learned to recognize through months of attentive partnership. With a quiet whistle, she called him back to her side, where he immediately relaxed. After the Jenkins family departed, Dr. Reynolds' enthusiasm was palpable. "I'm even more convinced that Thunder belongs in our program," he declared. "His alerting accuracy is exceptional, and his recovery response support is textbook perfect. With professional development, he could become the foundation for an entirely new certification track." He turned to Sarah, his expression earnest. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand your hesitation, but I must be candid. Animals of Thunder's caliber and potential are exceedingly rare. Our foundation is prepared to increase our offer substantially." The new figure he mentioned caused even Mrs. Wilson to gasp softly. Additionally, he continued, we would guarantee Emma's involvement through annual visits to our training center, full acknowledgement in all publications about Thunder's work, and a college scholarship to pursue veterinary medicine or any animal-related field she might choose. The comprehensive nature of the offer was clearly designed to address every possible objection. Sarah, who had been standing firm despite her practical concerns, showed the first signs of wavering. That's certainly generous, Dr. Reynolds. We'll need two. No, Emma said suddenly, her voice quiet but firm. The adults turned to her in surprise. Emma, Sarah began cautiously, we should at least consider. No, Emma repeated more strongly this time. Thunder isn't for sale, not for any amount. She straightened her shoulders, summoning her father's confidence that had increasingly become her own. He's doing important work right here. Zach needs him. Timmy needs him. The other children we're just starting to help need him. Dr. Reynolds regarded her with a mixture of admiration and frustration. I understand your emotional attachment to Emma. It's commendable, but emotions sometimes prevent us from seeing the bigger picture. Thunder could help establish protocols that would benefit thousands of children. With respect, Dr. Reynolds, Emma replied, surprising everyone with her poise, I don't think you do understand. Thunder isn't just a tool for developing protocols. He's a partner. He works with these specific children because he's formed bonds with them, bonds that help them feel safe enough to make progress. Mrs. Wilson nodded approvingly as Emma continued, her confidence growing. And there's something else my dad always taught me. Good training is based on trust and relationship, not just techniques. Thunder works the way he does because of our partnership. You can't just transfer that to another handler and expect the same results. Dr. Reynolds' expression cooled slightly. While I appreciate your perspective, young lady, I believe professionals with decades of experience might have a more comprehensive understanding of service animal dynamics than a child, however dedicated. He turned to Sarah, dismissing Emma from the adult conversation. Mrs. Thompson, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Sarah, who had been watching her daughter with growing pride, shook her head. Actually, Dr. Reynolds, Emma is Thunder's primary handler and trainer. Her assessment carries significant weight in any decision about his future. She moved to stand beside her daughter, and I happen to agree with her evaluation of the situation. The atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly. Dr. Reynolds' professional demeanor slipped momentarily, revealing a flash of irritation before he composed himself. I see. Well, our offer remains open for consideration. Thunder's potential is simply too significant to ignore. He produced another business card, placing it deliberately on the table. Should you reconsider, please contact me directly. Sometimes a bit of distance from emotional attachments provides clarity. After the foundation representatives departed, Mrs. Wilson let out a low whistle. That man is not accustomed to hearing the word no, she observed. Sarah sank into a kitchen chair, the emotional tension of the confrontation evident in her posture. That was a life-changing amount of money, she said quietly, not in accusation but simple acknowledgement of reality. Emma sat beside her mother, Thunder settling at her feet with a soft sigh. I know, Mom, but Thunder's already changing lives right here. And Dad always said some things aren't measured in dollars. Over the following days, Dr. Reynolds made several more attempts to persuade the Thompsons, each offer more generous than the last. News of his interest in Thunder spread through Oak Ridge's efficient grapevine, creating unexpected ripples in the community. Some neighbors, aware of Sarah's financial struggles since Robert's death, questioned whether Emma's attachment to Thunder was preventing her mother from accepting a solution to their problems. Others, particularly the families directly benefiting from Thunder's work, rallied in support. Carol Jenkins organized a community meeting at the local church, where parents shared stories of their children's progress through interaction with Thunder. Timmy Wilson's doctor provided a written assessment documenting measurable improvements in the boy's sensory processing and social engagement since beginning sessions with the German Shepherd. The situation reached a tipping point when Emma arrived home from school to find Dr. Reynolds speaking with her mother on the porch, his tone more insistent than during previous visits. "The Foundation's board is growing impatient, Mrs. Thompson," he was saying. "This opportunity won't remain available indefinitely. At some point we must allocate our resources elsewhere." Emma paused at the garden gate, Thunder alert at her side. Something in the doctor's demeanor had changed, a subtle shift from persuasive to pressuring that triggered the same instinctive wariness she had felt from the beginning. "I understand your position," Sarah replied evenly. "But as I've explained, this isn't a simple transaction. Thunder provides essential support to children in our community. Children who could be served by conventional therapy programs if properly funded," Dr. Reynolds countered. "Consider this, the Foundation could establish a grant for Oak Ridge, providing professional therapy services for every child currently working with Thunder, plus dozens more. Wouldn't that create greater community benefit than one dog with unpredictable health issues?" Before Sarah could respond, Emma stepped forward, Thunder moving precisely with her. "Dr. Reynolds," she said calmly, drawing his attention, "may I ask why your foundation is so specifically interested in Thunder? There are many German Shepherds with service training available through rescue organizations." The question seemed to catch him off guard. "As I've explained, Thunder's unique combination of attributes and his remarkable story make him ideal for our pilot program." "But specifically what attributes?" Emma pressed, her father's analytical approach to training evident in her methodical questioning. "Is it his alerting accuracy? His recovery support techniques? Or is it something else entirely?" A flash of irritation crossed Dr. Reynolds' face before he smoothed his expression. "Young lady, the complex evaluation metrics used by our foundation involve multiple factors beyond simple behavioral traits. Now, if you'll excuse us, your mother and I were having an adult conversation about Thunder's future." "Thunder's future involves me," Emma stated firmly. "And you haven't answered my question." The standoff might have escalated further had Sheriff Miller not chosen that moment to pull into the driveway, his patrol car raising dust on the gravel. The local law enforcement officer had become a regular visitor since Thunder began working with his nephew, who struggled with anxiety after a car accident the previous year. "Afternoon, Sarah." "Emma," he called, approaching the porch. He nodded politely to Dr. Reynolds. "Hope I'm not interrupting. Just dropped by to confirm Thunder's session with Tyler on Saturday." Dr. Reynolds excused himself shortly afterward, his departure marked by uncharacteristic abruptness. As his black SUV pulled away, Sheriff Miller watched thoughtfully. "That the fella from the fancy foundation I've been hearing about?" he asked, accepting Sarah's offer of lemonade. "Been asking some mighty persistent questions around town about your operation here in Thunder's background." Emma and Sarah exchanged concerned glances. "What kind of questions?" Sarah asked. Sheriff Miller shrugged. "Mostly about Thunder's training history, medical records, that sort of thing. I'm been particularly interested in who has legal ownership since the auction sale." He sipped his lemonade, his casual tone belied by the sharpness in his eyes. Seemed especially keen on whether the auction paperwork was properly filed. "Thought you might want to know." Sheriff Miller's warning about Dr. Reynolds' inquiries into Thunder's ownership cast a shadow over the Thompson household. That evening, Sarah contacted the county clerk's office to verify that all paperwork from the auction had been properly filed and recorded. The clerk assured her that everything was in order, but the seed of unease had been planted. "I don't understand why he's so fixated on Thunder," Sarah said as she prepared dinner, casting occasional glances out the window toward the driveway. "There must be dozens of service dogs available through professional channels." Emma, sitting at the kitchen table reviewing Thunder's training log, looked up thoughtfully. "Maybe it's because of Dad's connection to the original training program. Maybe Thunder is special in ways we don't fully understand yet." For the next several days, Emma noticed unfamiliar vehicles driving slowly past their property. Twice she spotted a black sedan parked at the end of their rural road, its occupant apparently watching the house through binoculars. When she mentioned these observations to Sheriff Miller during his nephew's Saturday session with Thunder, his expression grew serious. "I'll increase patrols in your area," he promised, making a note in his small pocket notebook. "And Emma, you might want to keep Thunder closer to the house for the time being, just as a precaution." Emma heeded the sheriff's advice, curtailing their usual training walks to the far pasture and ensuring Thunder remained within sight of the house at all times. She also began documenting everything: visitors to the property, unusual vehicles, the timing of Dr. Reynolds' increasingly insistent phone calls. Her notebook filled with details that seemed insignificant individually but formed a troubling pattern when viewed collectively. Mrs. Wilson, ever practical, suggested additional security measures. "Robert always kept that old trail camera for tracking deer movements," she reminded Sarah. "It might be worth setting it up near the barn where Thunder sleeps." The wildlife camera, retrieved from storage and positioned strategically, captured nothing unusual for several nights. Dr. Reynolds made no further in-person appearances, though his phone calls continued, each one more pressuring than the last. The Foundation's final offer, he warned, would expire at the end of the month, after which the opportunity would be permanently withdrawn. "We're considering other candidates," he informed Sarah during their last conversation, though none with Thunder's particular qualifications. Just as the situation seemed to be resolving itself, disaster struck on a windy Tuesday night in late October. Emma awakened to Thunder's urgent barking from the barn, not his usual alert sound, but a desperate, alarming cry that sent her bolting upright in bed. Through her bedroom window, she saw an ominous orange glow illuminating the darkness. "Mom," she screamed, already pulling on her boots. "The barn's on fire." Sarah, emerging from her room in a bathrobe, took one look out the window and grabbed the phone. "I'm calling 911. Emma, stay here." But Emma was already racing down the stairs and out the door, the cold night air hitting her lungs like a physical blow as she ran toward the barn. The structure, over a century old with weathered wooden siding, had caught fire at the rear corner farthest from Thunder's enclosure. Flames licked up the exterior wall, feeding on the dry timber, and accelerated by the autumn wind. Thunder's barking grew more frantic as Emma approached. Through the gathering smoke, she could see him in his large kennel inside the barn entrance, pacing anxiously, prevented from escape by the secure gate designed to keep him safe at night. "Fine then, Bo, coming in." Without hesitation, Emma pulled her pajama shirt up over her nose and mouth and entered the barn. The heat was intense, the smoke thickening rapidly as the fire spread along the roof beams. She reached Thunder's enclosure, fingers fumbling with the latch as her eyes stung and watered. "It's okay, boy," she gasped, finally swinging the gate open. "Come on." "Whoa." Thunder bolted from the kennel, but then did something unexpected. Instead of heading for the door, he darted deeper into the barn, toward the tack room where Emma stored all of their training equipment and her father's notebooks. "Thunder, no," Emma cried, but the German shepherd was already disappearing into the smoke. Coughing violently, Emma followed, the heat intensifying with each step. She found Thunder in the tack room, pulling frantically at her father's old training bag, which contained his original notebooks and Thunder's complete medical records. "Believe it," Emma commanded, but for perhaps the first time since their partnership began, Thunder disobeyed. He gripped the bag firmly in his teeth and looked at her with an urgency she couldn't ignore. The understanding dawned through her panic. Emma grabbed the bag strap, allowing Thunder to help her drag it toward the exit. The smoke was now so thick that she could barely see, and the roar of the flames grew deafening as the fire consumed the barn's upper level. They were halfway to the door when a burning beam crashed down just yards away, sending up a shower of sparks and blocking their most direct escape route. Emma's lungs burned, her vision narrowing as oxygen deprivation began to affect her. She dropped to her knees, where the air was marginally clearer, still clutching the bag's strap. Thunder pressed against her side, urging her forward, guiding her toward a narrow gap between the fallen debris and the wall. Outside, Sarah's screams pierced the roar of the fire as she was physically restrained by neighbors who had arrived ahead of the fire department. "My daughter's in there," she cried, fighting against their hold. "Let me go." Just as the fire truck's sirens became audible in the distance, Thunder emerged from the burning barn, dragging both the training bag and Emma, who gripped the strap with white-knuckled determination even as consciousness slipped away from her. The German Shepherd pulled his young handler safely onto the gravel driveway before collapsing beside her, his own breathing labored from smoke inhalation. Paramedics arrived moments after the fire truck, immediately administering oxygen to both girl and dog as firefighters battled the blaze. The barn, containing generations of Thompson family history and all of Thunder's training equipment, was clearly beyond saving. The focus shifted to preventing the fire from spreading to the nearby house. As Emma regained consciousness in the ambulance, her first whispered word was Thunder. The paramedic assured her that the dog was receiving treatment, though his condition was serious. Through her oxygen mask, Emma managed to communicate one critical request: the bag, check the bag. Sheriff Miller, who had arrived at the scene shortly after the fire trucks, took custody of Robert Thompson's training bag. Inside, he found not only the precious notebooks and medical records, but also something unexpected the wildlife camera misses. Wilson had suggested they install, apparently removed from its mounting location and hastily stuffed into the bag. At the hospital, as doctors treated Emma for smoke inhalation and minor burns on her hands and forearms, Sheriff Miller reviewed the camera's footage with mounting concern. The final clips, recorded just hours before the fire began, showed a clear image of two men in dark clothing approaching the barn, one carrying what appeared to be a gas can. Though their faces were partially obscured, one figure was unmistakable: the distinctive silver-streaked hair and tall stature of Dr. James Reynolds was clearly visible as he directed his companion toward the rear of the barn. The evidence of arson was irrefutable, but it provided little comfort to the Thompsons as they faced their new reality. The barn was destroyed, along with all their training equipment. Emma would recover from her physical injuries, but the emotional trauma of the night would linger far longer. And most devastating of all, Thunder remained in critical condition at the veterinary hospital, his heroic rescue effort compounded by the stress of a major seizure triggered by the traumatic events. As dawn broke over the smoldering ruins of the barn, Sarah held her daughter's hand in the hospital room, both of them exhausted beyond words. "Why, Mom?" Emma finally whispered, her voice raw from smoke and emotion. "Why would he do this?" Sarah had no answer that could make sense of such calculated malice. The question hung between them. As heavy as the smoke that still clung to their clothes and hair, what drove someone to such desperate measures to acquire a single German Shepherd with a seizure condition? The news of the barn fire spread through Oak Ridge with the speed that only small-town tragedies can achieve. By noon the day after the fire, the Thompsons' driveway overflowed with vehicles as community members arrived bearing food, supplies, and offers of assistance. Sheriff Miller had issued a press release confirming that the fire was being investigated as arson, though he carefully omitted specific details about the suspects to avoid compromising the ongoing investigation. Mrs. Wilson organized the relief efforts with military precision, delegating tasks to volunteers and establishing a rotating schedule of visitors to the hospital where Emma remained under observation. Carol Jenkins and her son Zach coordinated donations of training equipment to replace what had been lost in the fire. Even Mr. Anderson, the auctioneer who had initially been skeptical of Emma's ability to care for Thunder, arrived with lumber and tools, and promising to lead the effort to rebuild the barn once the investigation cleared the site. "This community sticks together," he told Sarah, his weathered hands gripping his hat. "Always has, always will." The outpouring of support was overwhelming, but for Emma, nothing could fill the void created by Thunder's absence. The German Shepherd remained in critical condition at Oak Ridge Veterinary Hospital, his recovery complicated by respiratory damage and the lingering effects of a major seizure. Dr. Harrison allowed Emma to visit briefly each day, though the sessions often ended in tears as she witnessed her beloved partner struggle to heal. "He saved my life," she whispered during one such visit, her fingers gently stroking Thunder's ear as he lay sedated and connected to monitoring equipment. He could have run out alone, but he came back for me. Sheriff Miller's investigation progressed rapidly, aided by the camera footage and physical evidence recovered from the scene. The second man in the video was identified as a former employee of Northeast Service Canines, the organization that had initially trained Thunder before financial troubles forced them to auction their animals. When confronted with the evidence, the man quickly implicated Dr. Reynolds in exchange for reduced charges. 5 days after the fire, Sheriff Miller arrived at the hospital where Emma was preparing for discharge. His expression was uncharacteristically somber as he requested a private conversation with her and Sarah. "We've pieced together what's been happening," he explained, notebook open on his lap. "Dr. James Reynolds isn't who he claimed to be. The National Service Animal Foundation exists, but he doesn't work for them. His real name is James Renfield, and until 6 months ago he was the research director at PharmaPet Laboratories." Sarah frowned. "I've never heard of it." "Few people have. It's a private research facility that develops medications for animal neurological disorders." Sheriff Miller flipped a page in his notebook. "According to our investigation, they've been working on an experimental treatment for canine epilepsy, a drug that could potentially eliminate seizures entirely." Emma's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. "Thunder," she whispered. Sheriff Miller nodded. "Exactly. Thunder was part of their initial research program before being transferred to Northeast Service Canines. He was specifically bred for certain neurological markers that made him valuable to their research. When the service dog facility went bankrupt and auctioned their animals, PharmaPet lost track of him." "But why go to such extremes to get him back?" Sarah asked. "Surely there are other dogs they could use for their research." "That's where things get complicated," Sheriff Miller replied, turning another page. "According to our source, Thunder isn't just any research subject. He's what they call a perfect responder, the only dog in their breeding program whose brain chemistry reacted ideally to their experimental compound. Without him, their research has stalled completely." Emma's face paled. "They wanted to take him back to their laboratory." "Yes. And based on what we've learned, their research protocols aren't exactly humane. They lost their primary funding last year after a review board questioned their methods." Sheriff Miller closed his notebook. "Renfield, or Reynolds, as you knew him, was desperate to recover Thunder to salvage the research program and his career. The revelation explained the increasingly aggressive attempts to acquire Thunder, but it provided little comfort. The barn remained destroyed. Thunder's condition was still precarious, and Emma found herself wrestling with a new fear. What would happen when the story became public? Would other researchers come looking for Thunder? Her concerns were valid. The following morning, as Emma was settling back into her bedroom at home, a sleek corporate car arrived at the Thompson property. Sarah met the visitors in the driveway, a man and woman in business attire who introduced themselves as genuine representatives from the National Service Animal Foundation. "We were alerted by law enforcement about the misuse of our organization's name," the woman explained, presenting official identification. "We wanted to personally express our dismay at what you've endured and offer our assistance." Initially suspicious after their experience with Renfield, Sarah insisted on verification calls to the sheriff's office and the foundation's headquarters before inviting the representatives inside. Once their legitimacy was confirmed, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "We're aware of Thunder's history and his current medical situation," the male representative explained. "Our foundation has been monitoring the PharmaPet situation for some time, concerned about their ethical practices. When we learned that one of their research subjects had been effectively rescued through the auction, we were quietly pleased." His colleague nodded in agreement. "The techniques your daughter has developed with Thunder, particularly his community service model, align perfectly with our organization's new direction. We'd like to offer substantial support to rebuild your training facility, provide medical care for Thunder, and document your methodologies for potential implementation elsewhere." Unlike Renfield's proposal, their offer carried no requirement to surrender Thunder or relocate the program. Instead, they proposed a partnership that would keep Thunder in Oak Ridge while providing resources to expand the services Emma had pioneered. "We believe your daughter has created something truly innovative," the woman told Sarah, her admiration evident. Service animals with minor health issues themselves serving as therapeutic partners for children with similar conditions. It's revolutionary thinking. As the legitimate foundation representatives outlined their proposal, Emma felt a weight lifting. The partnership would bring not only financial support but also professional validation of the work she and Thunder had accomplished together. More importantly, it would include legal protection to prevent any future attempts by PharmaPet or similar organizations to claim ownership of Thunder. The most dramatic reversal came that evening when Dr. Harrison called from the veterinary hospital with unexpected news. Thunder's latest test results show significant improvement, he reported, his voice carrying the first note of optimism they'd heard in days. "His respiratory function is stabilizing and we haven't recorded any seizure activity for the past 36 hours. Does that mean he's going to recover?" Emma asked, hope creeping into her voice for the first time since the fire. "It's still a complex case, Doctor," Harrison cautioned, "but I'm increasingly confident. There's something else you should know. The medication protocol we've been using, it's working better than anticipated. I've consulted with specialists, and they believe Thunder's seizure condition might be manageable to a degree we hadn't thought possible. The collaboration with the National Service Animal Foundation accelerated Thunder's medical care. A specialist consulted on his case, offering advanced treatment options previously unavailable in a small town like Oak Ridge. Within 2 weeks, Thunder was stable enough to return home, though his recovery regimen remained intensive. In a final ironic twist, the investigation into PharmaPet revealed that their prized experimental compound, the one they had been so desperate to continue testing on Thunder, was fundamentally flawed. Independent analysis by Foundation scientists determined that the medication would likely have caused severe long-term damage to canine neurological systems, despite its short-term efficacy in controlling seizures. They weren't just unethical in their methods, the Foundation's scientific director explained during a follow-up visit. Their entire research approach was dangerously misguided. Thunder's escape from their program may have been the luckiest thing that ever happened to him. As autumn deepened toward winter and the scars from the fire began to heal, the Thompson family found themselves at the center of a story that had evolved from personal tragedy to something approaching triumph. The Foundation's support enabled not only Thunder's recovery but also expanded opportunities for their unique community service model. Construction began on a new, improved training facility designed specifically for their program's needs. Most significantly, Emma's innovative approach to working with Thunder despite his health challenges became the foundation for a new classification of service animals, those with managed medical conditions serving as therapeutic partners for individuals with similar needs. The protocol she had developed instinctively became the basis for professional guidelines being implemented in programs across the country. Sometimes, Sarah remarked as they watched the framework of the new barn rising on the footprint of the old, the worst things that happen to us lead to the best possible outcomes. Emma, with Thunder once again steady by her side, couldn't help but agree. 6 months after the fire, on a crisp spring morning with dew still clinging to the grass, Emma stood at the entrance of the newly completed training facility. The structure bore little resemblance to the old weathered barn it had replaced. Modern and thoughtfully designed, it featured specialized areas for different types of training, climate control for year-round comfort, and accessible features to accommodate children with various physical needs. Above the main entrance, a hand-carved wooden sign read Thompson Thunder Training Center with a silhouette of a German Shepherd in profile. Today marked the official opening ceremony, an event that had drawn attendance from throughout the county and beyond. The parking area, newly graveled and expanded, was filled with vehicles ranging from the familiar trucks and cars of Oak Ridge residents to the more polished automobiles of Foundation representatives, regional media, and even a state senator whose grandson had recently begun working with a service dog. "Nervous?" Sarah asked, adjusting the collar of Emma's new blue blazer, a gift from Mrs. Wilson for the occasion. Emma shook her head, her hand resting on Thunder's head. The German Shepherd had made a remarkable recovery, though subtle changes remained. His breathing sometimes grew labored during extended activity, and his once weekly seizures required ongoing medication. But these challenges had been incorporated into his working schedule, becoming part of the educational value he provided to the children he served. "Not nervous," Emma replied, "just thinking about how Dad would feel about all this." Sarah's eyes softened as she straightened a photo of Robert Thompson that held a place of honor in the facility's entrance hall. "He would be beyond proud, Emma, not just of what you've built, but of who you've become while building it." The ceremony proceeded with the community warmth characteristic of Oak Ridge. Sheriff Miller handled the introduction, recounting the journey from Emma's impulsive auction purchase to the establishment of their groundbreaking program. Mr. Anderson, who had overseen much of the construction, ceremonially handed Emma the keys to the new facility, his earlier skepticism replaced by genuine respect. "This young lady," he announced to the gathered crowd, "taught an old dog like me some new tricks about faith, perseverance, and seeing potential where others see only problems." Representatives from the National Service Animal Foundation presented the official certification of the Thompson Thunder Training Center as an authorized affiliate facility. This designation came with ongoing support and the ability to train and place service animals throughout the region, expanding their impact far beyond what Emma had initially imagined possible. The most moving moment came when the children who had worked with Thunder over the past year presented a collaborative gift, a handmade quilt featuring squares designed by each class child, depicting their experiences with the German Shepherd who had changed their lives. Zach Jenkins, now nearly seizure-free thanks to medication identified through his work with Thunder, spoke on behalf of the group. "Before Thunder and Emma," he said, his voice steady despite the crowd, "I was afraid all the time. Afraid of when the next seizure would come, afraid of being different, afraid of people seeing me at my worst. Thunder taught me that being different isn't bad sometimes, it's what makes you special." As the formal ceremony concluded and guests mingled throughout the new facility, Emma found a quiet moment to sit with Thunder in the small meditation garden Mrs. Wilson had insisted on including in the design. The peaceful space, sheltered by young maple trees transported from the edge of their property, provided a retreat where children could decompress when overwhelmed or where Thunder could rest when needed. "We did it, boy," Emma whispered, her fingers gently stroking the scar on Thunder's side, a permanent reminder of the fire that had nearly claimed them both. The German Shepherd leaned against her, his amber eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that transcended traditional human-animal relationships. The garden's tranquility was briefly interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Harrison, who had become a steadfast supporter of their program, providing pro bono veterinary care and consulting on Thunder's ongoing treatment plan. "Quite a transformation," he commented, settling onto the bench beside Emma. "Both the facility and this remarkable animal." He reached out to examine the healed scar tissue on Thunder's side with professional interest. "I've been reviewing his latest test results. The neurological indicators are more stable than I ever expected. Whatever they were breeding for at that laboratory, they inadvertently created something extraordinary." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "He's special, but not because of what they did to him. He's special because of what he chose to become despite what they did." She glanced toward the main building, where children's laughter mingled with adult conversation. "Dad used to say that the measure of good training isn't control, it's partnership. Thunder taught me that more than I ever taught him." As afternoon faded toward evening and the celebration continued inside, Sarah found Emma still sitting in the garden, so a notebook open on her lap as she sketched plans for the coming year's programming. Thunder dozed at her feet, occasionally twitching in dreams that only he could see. "The Foundation representatives want to discuss expanding the youth training program," Sarah said, sitting beside her daughter. "They believe other children could learn to work with animals the way you've worked with Thunder." Emma looked up from her notes. "Teaching other kids to be handlers?" Sarah nodded. "They're calling it the Junior Handler Initiative. The idea is to identify children with your kind of empathy and instinct, then provide structured training to develop those natural abilities." She smiled, a hint of mischief in her expression. "They're suggesting you might be qualified to lead the program, despite being only 11. The proposed initiative represented yet another unexpected evolution of what had begun as a simple rescue mission. From saving one unwanted dog, Emma had progressed to developing a community service model, and now potentially to training a new generation of young handlers who might carry the work forward. "I'd need help," Emma said thoughtfully. "Teaching is different from doing." "You'd have all the support you need," Sarah assured her. "The foundation, Mrs. Wilson, even MS. Parker has offered to help develop appropriate educational materials." She paused, then added softly, "And you have all of Dad's knowledge to draw from." As twilight settled over Oak Ridge, the celebration at the new training center gradually wound down. Visitors departed with promises to return, foundation representatives confirmed follow-up meetings, and the last of the local well-wishers helped tidy up before heading home. Finally, only the Thompson family and Thunder remained, standing together at the entrance to the facility that had risen from literal ashes. Sarah placed her arms around her daughter's shoulders, both of them looking at the illuminated sign above the door. "Your father used to talk about legacy," she said quietly, "about the importance of leaving something meaningful behind. He would be amazed to see what you've created." Emma leaned into her mother's embrace, Thunder pressed comfortingly against her leg. The journey had been more difficult and more rewarding than she could have imagined when she stood in that auction barn clutching her coffee tin of savings. A 10-year-old's impulsive compassion had transformed not only one dog's life but an entire community's understanding of service, partnership, and possibility. But as they turned toward home, the lights of the new training center illuminating their path, Emma reflected on the question Thunder's amber eyes had asked her that first day: why would someone choose what others had rejected? The answer, she now understood, was simple. Sometimes the things others can't see value in are precisely the things that hold the greatest potential, not despite their differences, but because of them. In saving Thunder, Emma had found her own path forward through grief. In helping Thunder fulfill his purpose, she had discovered her own. And in their partnership, both had found healing that neither could have achieved alone, a lesson that would continue to ripple outward from Oak Ridge for many years to come. In life's autumn years, we often reflect on the legacies we'll leave behind. Emma and Thunder's story reminds us that our greatest contributions may emerge from unexpected places: a child's compassion, a damaged creature's resilience. When Emma chose Thunder despite his flaws, she demonstrated wisdom many adults never attain. That value isn't diminished by imperfection. Their journey shows us that healing is reciprocal. In helping others, we often find our own restoration. For those of us navigating health challenges or feeling our purpose diminish with age, Thunder's transformation offers profound hope. He found his greatest service not despite his seizures, but partially because of them connecting with children who understood vulnerability firsthand. Your own challenges, like Thunder's, may uniquely qualify you to touch lives in ways others cannot. Remember, it's never too late to create meaning, build community, or transform suffering into purpose. The most beautiful legacies often begin with simply seeing value where others see limitation. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.